The prospect of a UK debt crisis or sovereign default has just become a lot more real. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So from The Spectator, the coronavirus crash could be even worse than we feared. We'll read from down here. Today's memo issued words of warning. So this is a leaked memo from the UK Treasury, and it is basically the same story that I was covering yesterday. But I really felt this video required just being on its own, because if you take nothing else away from what I talk about on economics and the problems we have just of how big government debt is, if you take nothing else away, just this video, just listen to what the Treasury say and take your own opinions on it. I think this is a big deal anyway. So today's memo issued words of warning. In a worst case scenario, this could lead to a liquidity crisis and ultimately a sovereign debt crisis. A comparable UK scenario would be the UK market conditions in 1976 ahead of the IMF loan, when high and volatile inflation led to a loss of macro strategy credibility and reluctance to hold UK debt. Now, I think this is even underestimating the scenario, just because when they say in 1976 the UK received an IMF loan, if it does turn as bad as the Treasury are now, even in their own words, well, this is obviously a leaked memo, the central banks, the exchequer, they never want like these kind of things to be out in the public domain, this kind of knowledge, because money, especially fiat money, only really works on the idea of confidence, right? As soon as you start saying, well, there is a potential that the money goes bad, very high inflation could happen, people may start piling out of the pound, which only leads to more inflation and more problems down the road. It all works off confidence. Now, if the Treasury come out, or if Boris Johnson came out, or Andrew Bailey at the Bank of England came out and say there are huge problems in the pound, that will cause confidence to plummet. If Andrew Bailey or Boris Johnson or the Treasury or the Exchequer come out and said, gold has no value, price of gold won't really react that much. It might drop down a little bit because it's a little bit of negative sentiment, but gold is gold. It's had a store of value for well over 5,000 years. Humans have selected it as the default currency for 5,000 years. Fiat money, now it's completely detached from gold. There's not backed by anything, only works off confidence. So when the Treasury come out and saying, potentially we could be looking at a sovereign debt crisis, this really is a big problem, and people may start losing confidence in the pound. So all I want people to maybe consider taking away from this, I'm not saying what you should do with your own life, but we've had big problems in just the size of government debt, not only in the UK, you look across Europe, you look across the entire West, also including many parts of Asia, such as Japan. We have huge problems with the amount of debt. Some countries are in bigger problems than others. But a leaked memo from the UK Treasury now saying we could be in a comparable situation to 1976 when the UK needed an IMF loan. Now, if we do get to the point of we need some kind of bailout from other countries or an international body such as the IMF, it's probably not going to happen, because in the globalized, interconnected world now, if the UK faces a sovereign debt crisis, we're probably going to see many other countries at the same time in the same boat. There's other parts of Europe that are already further ahead down the road than us, right? So Italy, Greece, Portugal, Spain, probably Ireland, they're further down the road than us. So they're going to be needing bailouts before us. So there won't be a pot of money left by the time the UK needs one, which ultimately means, I believe, they will almost certainly to try and monetize the debt, right? So they'll print money, debase the currency, QE, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing. It's all just increasing the money supply to basically devalue the debt, and they just use that money to pay the debt down, or they buy their own bonds. So it's going to get very, very sticky ahead. I mean, I've really got into following economics and just looking into the whole situation back in 2007, 2008, when the housing bubble started popping. So it's been like a solid 12 years, but this is it's times now that it's just a real wake-up call. If you haven't woken up and you haven't made provisions to protect yourself by buying some gold, some silver, another means of protecting yourself from very high inflation that could be down the road, because now even the UK Treasury themselves are starting to wake up. These are the people who are just perma-bulls. They're perma-bulls on the pound. They're never worried about the size of UK debt. But it seems, at least internally, and I'm surprised this leaked memo came out and it's made almost no ripples. This should be major headline news. You're potentially facing the collapse of the government, the pound, everything we hold dear. The entire society potentially could come crashing down on this, and it's all because we chose to this would have happened with or without coronavirus, right? But coronavirus has just been, it's just slammed the accelerator down. Rather than running a £50 billion a year deficit, we're now going to run a £500 billion a year budget deficit, which just means we're a car accelerating towards a brick wall, and they're just speeding up. There's no attempt to even hit the brakes anymore. Has it all been for nothing? I thought this was an interesting tweet that Dan Hannan, former Conservative MEP, put on Twitter. I think it put on Twitter yesterday afternoon. Why do people keep claiming that the R0 dropped below 1 because of the lockdown? This chart via Alistair Hames takes the official death rate and assumes the same lead time as the imperial model. Some commentators evidently don't know their R's from their elbow, which I thought was a nice little play on words there. But it shows the graph, and using the models and using how people tend to die 15 days after first contracting COVID-19. Now, all these models, don't take it as gospel, but it seems apparent, or it seems quite possible, or indeed probable, looking at this calculation, that the R0 was dropping anyway, and it probably went below 1 before the lockdown was declared, which potentially means we have sacrificed. This is understandable, right? It's the same with the Swedish model. If you tell people what they should be doing, wash your hands more, social distance, keep your distance from elderly people. Most people are good, honest people. That's the only reason why society functions, right? It's the only reason why everybody doesn't go into a shop and just steal stuff, because if everybody just did that, shops wouldn't be able to open. Most people are honest and good people, and if you tell people to wash their hands, social distance, don't stay away from elderly people, the majority of people will do it. So people were taking that advice. It looks like the R0 did drop below 1 before the lockdown was declared. So potentially we have at least accelerated the collapse of the United Kingdom and the rest of the West. I just think this is really shocking news, guys. Just the one thing to take away from this, if you haven't done already and you do care about preserving your future, just look now at buying gold, buying silver, looking at ways of hedging yourself against potential inflation and currency collapse, because I think it's going to get very wild now. Even the UK Treasury themselves are, at least behind closed doors at this point, saying that it's probably going to get bad. It's probably going to be 1976 bad, and in my opinion, as soon as it gets to 1976 bad, it's going to get a whole lot worse, because we're probably not going to get an IMF bailout. They're probably just going to fire up the money printers, print till destruction, because that's the only tool they have left. We're already at zero interest rates. The government debt is already massive. They won't have any other options than debasing the currency. So it's quite worrying. This really should be front page news on every newspaper, but I just don't think enough people are connecting the dots at this point. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one, guys. How are you protecting yourself from what could be the coming destruction of everything we hold dearly? As always, like, comment, share, subscribe. I think this video is an important one. If you want to share this video with people that you care about and just say to them, look, now is the time to probably buy gold, buy silver, if you can even find physical precious metals at this point, because it's starting to get scarce. You only need like 1 in 1,000 people to start waking up, and the physical gold, physical silver that is available. Obviously, COVID is heavily disrupting it. I was checking some of the websites last night. It does seem you're looking at quite large waiting times at this point. I would say don't wait any longer if you want to protect yourself, because it really is that critical now. How soon the collapse comes, they're probably going to defer it for, I mean, it could come today, but it's probable that we still have some time left. It could be 1-2 years, even 5 years before. But when the collapse does come, you'll be glad you did protect yourself, in my opinion. As always, do your own research. This isn't investment advice, but do your own research. It really is a wake-up call. This is the canary in the mine at this point. Thanks for watching this video, guys. As always, I'll see you in the next video.